Good morning, everyone, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's ISSO and ISAC webinar for students from India. We welcome you to today's seminar, and now I would like to turn it over to the ISAC president, Ankit, to say a few words.
Thanks, Samantha. Hi, everyone. My name is Ankit. I'm a grad student at Columbia, and I also work in the capacity of president for Indian Student Association at Columbia, which is also known as ISAC. ISAC has been a fairly strong organization that connects all the South Asian students across Columbia and share different ideas, be it cultural ideas or educational ideas as well. We have been successfully hosting various events all throughout the year. Last year, we hosted the Diwali event, as well as we've always tried to come up with different ideas to cater to the Indian diaspora, as well as the other neighboring students across as well. Now, first of all, I would definitely like to thank ISSO for organizing this webinar at such a short notice, and also making sure that all the questions that different students have are being answered in today's session. I would also leave out all the ways that you can connect with ISAC for any kind of questions you have. If you want to join the team or if you want to contribute in any way with us, I'll leave all the details in the comment box, and we are happy to answer all the things that you have in your mind. And I look forward to this session. Thanks, Samantha. Over to you.
Thank you, Ankit. So welcome again. I'm Samantha Liu, and now I would like to introduce Dr. David Assel, Associate Provost and Director of ISSO, for his remarks.
Greetings from New York City. I'm Dr. David Austell, and I'm the Associate Provost and Director of the International Students and Scholars Office at Columbia University. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar. Each one of you, along with your advisors in the ISSO and the faculty and staff of your schools, are engaged in a most important endeavor. I speak of international education at its most profound, an opportunity for the peoples of the world to gather in safety and mutual pursuit of intellectual goals and personal growth at Columbia. As an academic community, we are all taking part in the ancient itineracy of higher education, the movement around the planet of people seeking academic excellence, the movement around this planet of international students, you, who will be our future hope, the future leaders of the world. What could be more important and reassuring in this difficult time? Please accept my very best wishes and kindest regards, and I hope the following information will be of assistance to you. Enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, David. Before we begin, we would like to introduce our panelists for today. We will go in order for everyone to do a self-introduction. I'm Samantha, and I'm the Associate Director for International Student Advising Team.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Soler. I'm an Associate Director at the International Students and Scholars Office. And I thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time.
Morning, everyone. I'm Claire Raybach. I'm a Senior Compliance Advisor at the ISSO, and I'm very glad that you're able to join us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nadia Rizvi. I'm an Assistant Director on the Compliance team at the ISSO, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gwyneth Smith. I work at the ISSO CUIMC office. That's the Columbia University Irving Medical Center, and I'm the Associate Director there. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So before we begin, just so you know, some people are asking questions about the recording. So the session will be recorded and will be posted to the ISSO website shortly after. I know that there is a orientation going on for CEAS, so some student might need to go to that orientation instead. So before we begin, we see lots of students joined our webinar today. We would like to do a quick poll to see who is with us today. So we're gonna open the poll here shortly. Okay, looks like we have majority of our students are newly admitted students, and we do have a few transfer and continuous students. It looks like that's a number of students do have visas already, and we do have CUMC students as well. Okay, so today's webinar, we will be addressing many questions that you have pre-submitted to us. And then at the end of the session, after we do the formal presentation, we will also open the session up for live Q&A. So if you have questions, you may put into the chat and we will address them later on. All right, so we can end this and we will move on to our next slide. Just a quick overview about today's session. We will talk a little bit about the guidance that was published, just a review, and we will go over a little bit about continuous students and the current status of the continuous student. But we will be spending majority of our time answering and addressing questions about new students for this upcoming year. So we shall go on from there. Okay, then now I will turn it over to Claire.
All right, so we'll start off with just an overview of recent government guidance that we received related to fall 2020 study. So we'll start with the F1 guidance we've received. SCVP has confirmed that newly admitted students are eligible to apply for a student visa and can enter the US for study this fall, as long as their program is either hybrid or in person and not 100% online only. They also clarified that for continuing students who were enrolled in the spring, that those students can continue to maintain status, whether they're enrolled in a hybrid program or online only, and whether they're inside or outside the US. With these clarifications, it does give us guidance that if during the semester, for any reason, if you've come for a hybrid program, and your class is switched to online only, maybe due to COVID-19, or it's built into part of your curriculum, you will continue to maintain status, even if there is that switch. And now we'll talk briefly about J1 guidance. It's very similar to the F1 guidance that we received. Basically that continuing students can continue to maintain their status, whether they're inside the US or outside the US, enrolled online only or in a hybrid program. And also in line with the F1 guidance for new incoming students, students can arrive and apply for the visa if their program will be hybrid this fall, but they cannot arrive for 100% online only study. And then we'll briefly look at an update that Columbia shared recently. So in July, you probably saw the announcement that Columbia would be pursuing hybrid study this fall. But on August 14th, President Bollinger did make a new announcement that all undergraduate programs this fall will be 100% online. With that change, the undergraduate students who are newly admitted with initial attendance I-20 may not arrive for the fall. And last week, we did host an ISSO webinar for undergraduate students. So if you're able to attend that as an undergraduate student, I hope it was helpful. It's also on our website. Would you like to review it? And if you are an undergraduate student and have any questions about that policy change, do feel free to reach out to us. And now I'll turn it back over to Sam.
Okay, great. Thanks, Claire. So we want to talk briefly about continuous students. So not much have changed. So there are some questions that came our way regarding enrollment and CPT and OPT. So the next couple of slides, we're gonna address some of those questions. So next, please. Thank you. So in terms of enrollment, continuous student can stay home, enroll online, or can stay come as a hybrid program, because for graduate level, we are going to be hybrid. So you are welcome to come anytime during the semester if you can make it into the New York area, or if you would like to stay home, you're welcome to do so as well. For continuing student, there's not much changes. So, all right, next. Okay. So some of you are enrolled in the semester term coursework. If you're enrolled in the semester term coursework, then make sure that you enroll 12 credits. However, a few of you are in the CEAS program and or GSAS program that is enrolled in the Fall AB program. So if you are in the Fall AB program, you wish to come, Fall B, you may still come to study for Fall B term. Make sure that, again, enrollment has a requirement. You need to enroll at least 6 credits for each of the half terms or 12 credits for the full term. As a continued student, you will not be able to skip out the term and maintain status. So be sure to enroll for 12 credits or 1 RU, which is a 1 resident unit if you're in GSAS.
Okay, so I am going to briefly speak about a leave of absence. And the first thing I want to say is that this refers to continuing students specifically. So if you are a newly admitted student, a leave of absence would not apply to you. If you wish to enroll in the spring, that would be a deferral. So for continuing students, a leave of absence, also known as a gap semester or gap year, nothing really has changed in terms of the process. So government guidelines as it relates to COVID-19 and a leave of absence, they did not make any changes on this. And so if you are considering taking a leave of absence, we encourage you to take a look at our website. We encourage you to talk to us at the ISSO before you make your final decision. We want to make sure that you understand the impact that a leave of absence will have on your status, on your visa, and you can find more information on our website. So this question is a very frequently asked question, is can I take 1 semester or 1 year off? And the answer is, it is possible, but it's important that you discuss this with your school, whether it's your student affairs office or your academic advisor or the program coordinator, depending on the structure of your program. It is possible to do this, but you do have to have a conversation with the school, because every school has its protocol in place and has certain deadlines that have to be met, certain documents that have to be submitted in order to approve a leave. The next question is also very frequently asked, and it is, can I use my unexpired F1 entry visa when I am ready to resume my full-time studies? So some of you have F1 entry visas that go into the future, 2, 3, or possibly even 5 years into the future. And so if you take a leave of absence, when you are ready to return, then the answer is yes, you can use that same visa. However, you must obtain a new I-20. You cannot use your current I-20 after you return from a leave of absence. You must request a new one, and you will find information on that on our website. Okay, and the last question as it relates to a leave is also very frequently asked, and it is, what impact does a leave of absence have on my employment benefits, specifically related to curricular practical training or CPT, or optional practical training or OPT? So the answer is, it depends. It depends on where you are in your academic program. Are you at the beginning of the program? Are you at the end of the program? Are you in your final term? And so in general, when you take a leave of absence, when you're ready to return, you must complete 2 semesters of study after your return to be eligible for CPT or OPT. So if you are in your final term of the program, you will not be eligible for OPT upon program completion. And so it's very important that, again, that you reach out to us before you make your final decisions about a leave, so that you're very clear on what the impact will be. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Great, thanks, Jen. So many students have asked this question about TA/RA positions and the stipends. In terms of stipends, you are eligible to receive the non-service stipend. However, in terms of being hired as a TA or RA, this question is really something that you will need to follow with your department. As you probably received the email from the President Bollinger recently about university payment, there's a lot of updates and accommodation that's being made. So departments will be reaching out if you have appointments to teach this fall. They will follow up with individual students to sort out what is needed. All right. So many students also asked about question about CPT. Can student continue to engage in CPT? For continued student, yes, you are eligible to apply for CPT. You can apply to our office as normal. The same process is on our website. And if you want to read about the CPT requirements, you can go to our website for the updated information. Really, for continued students, everything is the same. The only difference is that if you are working online, you will need to work for a US-based company in order for us to process your CPT approval. If you plan to work at home, then you're welcome to engage in CPT at home. Another student also asked about whether you can have multiple CPT. Yes, you are eligible to have multiple companies that you can work for. So working online is okay. There is a difference between OPT and CPT. If you are going to be graduating and you are going to be working on OPT, you need to make sure that you return home. So the eligibility for CPT are still the same. However, OPT is a little bit different for students who are looking to apply this fall. All right, next slide. So many students ask about applying for OPT from abroad. Unfortunately, right now, there's no option to apply for OPT from abroad. If you are in your final semester and you apply to plan to apply for OPT, you will need to be in the US in order to apply. We will process your OPT request while you're abroad and then mail your OPT applications to you. However, before you may apply to USCIS, you will need to be in the US to do so. Okay. All right, next. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I'll be answering questions that we received from newly admitted students. I know that there is a CEAS orientation at 9:30. So if you're a new student that's starting your program this fall and you wanted to hop over to your CEAS orientation, feel free to do that. This will be recorded and you can always refer to it. But many of these questions are going to be for new students who are still overseas, who are still abroad. And hopefully I'll answer some of the frequently asked questions for you today. So the first question that we receive frequently from our new students is about visa processing. Essentially, what is the status of visa processing right now? And since this is specific to our Indian students, I wanted to give you some positive feedback that we've been receiving from our students, that as of mid-August, many locations, many US Embassy locations in India have resumed visa processing. Now the reopening days and visa scheduling process will be unique to the local conditions, so make sure that you're checking their website. We've also heard from students that they're making suggestions for visa appointment dates based on your I-20 start date. So again, just make sure that you're following the local procedures, but we've heard some great feedback and very positive news, and we're hopeful that if you don't yet have your visa, that you'll be able to apply for a visa in the coming weeks. So the next question, which is related to visas, is about receiving your student visa, but then deciding to arrive to the US later, for example, next spring or next fall. And the question is, will my visa stay valid? And the answer is yes. You can continue to use your unexpired student visa, which is issued, for example, if you recently received it, or if you will receive it in the coming weeks, but then you change your mind and you decide that you will stay in your home country and only arrive next year. The visa will be valid, but as a reminder, you have an I-20 with a specific fall start date on it, and you will need to have that I-20 amended. We've already emailed instructions to our students about how to request an amended I-20. If you haven't received those instructions yet, it's possible you just recently applied or recently received your I-20. We will be emailing you in the coming weeks about how to update your I-20. Hopefully that helps. So the next question is, again, somewhat related, but it's about deferrals. For students who choose not to start their program online from their home country, some are asking, can I defer my admission to a later semester? And the answer to that depends on your school and your department. So you want to reach out to the admissions office and your department to confirm your options to delay your enrollment to a later semester. And once again, if you've already received your fall I-20, you will need to receive an updated I-20 to arrive at a later time. And the next set of questions will be about enrollment for new students. So a frequent question we're receiving is, if for some reason I am unable to arrive in the US for the fall term, for example, if you're unable to receive your visa, if you have health concerns, or if you're unable to get a flight to enter the US, then the answer is yes, you can start your program from overseas and you can enroll entirely online. You will want to check on the specifics of enrollment with your department, but as another quick reminder, you're not yet in F1 status as a new student if you decide to start your program from overseas, which means, again, we'll have to update your I-20 if you've already received one and if you decide to enroll from your home country. And the next question is, again, about enrolling in online classes, but this time students are asking, what if I arrive to the United States and then I decide to take all online courses? The answer to that is generally no. We know that most of the students on this webinar today, overwhelmingly, you are new students. You're an initial student and not a transfer student, based on the poll that we conducted earlier. And that means that you cannot take 100% online courses. You do need to enroll in a hybrid program with some type of in-person component. The only exception to this is if you are an F1 transfer student, and we have a few of you on the webinar today, and I'll talk a little bit more about transfer students in just a minute. So the next concern is a valid one. It's a question about students who arrive to the US intending to participate in a hybrid program, but then Columbia decides to move courses entirely online. So that's a good and legitimate concern. The answer to that is, if the university moves to entirely online instruction due to COVID-19 health concerns, then students who are already in the United States are allowed to stay here while taking online courses. Great, and finally, I just wanted to clarify some enrollment questions that we receive from transfer students. So transfer students, again, there's only a few of you on the call today, but transfer students are asking about their enrollment requirements. Can they enroll entirely online from inside the US or outside of the US? And the answer is yes. You can enroll entirely in all online courses from anywhere inside the US, and you can also enroll from outside of the US. But as I mentioned earlier, if you already have a fall I-20 and you are outside of the US and will not enter until next year, we will need to update your I-20. And we've reached out to you, and we will continue to reach out to you in the coming weeks about how to update your I-20 if you need to. Hopefully that helps. And I'll turn it back to Sam now to answer questions on employment for newly admitted students.
Great, thanks, Nadia. So number of students are asking about CPT, OPT, which is very important to you. In terms of arriving, unfortunately, there's been a lot of delays with visa applications and arriving to the US. In order for a student to be eligible for CPT or OPT, one must arrive by the start date of the fall term. So if you're enrolling the full course load, that means you will need to arrive no later than 30 days from September 8th. That puts you to about no later than October 8th. For those students who are enrolled in the AB term setup, for Fall B, you will need to arrive within 15 days of October 26th, which takes you to about November 10th. So you should make your travel plans accordingly if you would like to have the fall term, either fall term or fall term B, to be counted toward your 2-term full-time requirement for CPT eligibility. So we'll take a look at how that breaks down in the next slide. So if you're enrolled for fall term, you will need to have 2 terms of full-time F1 status in order to be eligible. This means that you will need to enroll and arrive. As Nadia mentioned earlier, for new student, you may come when you are able to secure the visa and travel plans are possible, then you can come to study anytime during the semester. However, to be eligible for CPT or OPT, you will need to have at least 2 terms of full-time enrollment. For those students who are maybe in the B school or in programs that requires a internship, then this rule will not apply. For those, there's a few programs that has a requirement of internship for all students. So if you're in those programs, then you will be eligible to enroll in the CPT immediately when you arrive. All right, next, please. So to look at this carefully, what this means is that if you're enrolled in 12 credits or 1 RU, you will need to be enrolled for 2 terms, and you'll be eligible for CPT in the summer. For students who are coming for Fall B only, then Fall B through Summer A will be your 2 full academic terms. Then you'll be eligible for CPT in Summer B. Okay. All right, next please.
Okay, so we are reaching the final stretch here as far as the slides and the presentation. And so before we move on to our live Q&A, we do want to leave you with this slide. As you can see, there's our resources. In the ISSO COVID-19 Hub, you will find FAQs both for current and incoming students. You will find our latest policy updates. You will find information on resources as far as visas, travel, and the like. And our latest feature, which is a feature that will allow you to link to the latest updates by date. So that is very helpful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam.
Right, thanks, Jan. So what we are, like Jan mentioned, that we're constantly doing updates. One of the things that to get the most recent and quick update is by following us on social media. We have a number of different social medias that you may follow, especially our Facebook and Twitter accounts. We do update our information on our website. However, in order for you to be notified, the quickest way is to follow us on these social media and for events. We do post them and update them regularly, especially during this time and throughout the year. So with that, we're going to now open up to live Q&A. We see that there's a number of students have already submitted questions online. So we're gonna turn it over to our panelists to start addressing some of these questions now. Okay.
Thanks everyone for submitting your questions to us. So just give us a minute while we read through, and we're gonna pick out some questions that hopefully help everyone. So the first question I'll answer is about enrollment for newly arriving international students. So the question is, can an incoming international student remain in the US and enroll only in online courses, or do they need to take at least one hybrid course? So good question. Like to clarify that you cannot be entirely online as a new incoming student. So you do need to take at least one course that has a hybrid component or an in-person meeting component in order to maintain your F1 status. The only exception, again, is for transfer students. And sometimes I know there's a little bit of confusion about am I a transfer student or not? So a quick way to know whether or not the transfer student exception applies to you is to take a look at your I-20. Under your personal information at the very top, you'll see something called form issue reason. If the form issue reason is initial attendance, you are a new F1 student and you cannot be 100% online. If the form issue reason is transfer pending, you're considered an F1 transfer student and you can be entirely online. I hope that helps. And the next question I'll answer is a good one. Actually, we're receiving this a lot. The question is, I had selected spring semester deferral in the enrollment form, but now that consulates in India have opened, can I change it to fall B? So there's a couple of forms and surveys going around. I think your department or Cs may have sent a survey to ask, when do you plan on enrolling? And if you answered your school department or Cs, for example, and told them one thing, that survey and the results of those surveys were not actually shared with ISSO. And separately, ISSO sent links to forms to submit through Compass. And if you've not yet informed ISSO through Compass, then we don't have your information that you're coming for spring. I hope that helps. If ISSO is aware of your request to change to a spring deferral, we would have emailed you a confirmation from our email address from new international student at columbia.edu, and it would be signed from the ISSO. So if you've only reported to your school or your department that I'm going to come for spring, don't worry about it. ISSO has not changed your I-20 yet. ISSO will only change your I-20 once you submit the form through Compass. So again, if you have not informed ISSO about your intention to come for fall B, then refer to the email that we sent to new students. That email was sent on August 12th. So check your inbox for that. And you'll see towards the bottom of that email an option to log into Compass and report your change in arrival to us. And when you log in, you'll just select the option to come for whichever term you're intending to come for. So there's an option for fall B, there's an option for spring, summer, fall. So choose that, and that way you'll notify the ISSO, and we will update your I-20 and send you an electronic I-20 by email so that you can use that to get a visa and arrive for fall B. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Nadia. I'll jump in a couple questions now. So another question we received is, will the visa entry support letter given by the ISSO be enough for the visa interview to show that your program is not 100% online? So yeah, so everyone should have received an ISSO support letter that we created after the announcement from the university that everything would be hybrid for the fall. If you are in a graduate program or any other program that's not undergraduate, you can still use that letter and bring it with you to your visa interview. And you can show it to the consular officer should they request any confirmation that your program is online. But additionally, if you've received any communications from your school or department directly, since each school and department is making their own plans, showing that the curriculum is going to be hybrid, you may not have registered for classes yet, but maybe you have. You can also bring anything directly from your school or confirmation of your enrollment for the fall, and present those if the consular officer does request additional information about your program structure. And we also do have a lot of information about applying for a visa on our website. So I would recommend checking that out as well for tips and resources to prepare for your visa interview. Another question we received is from a transfer student who has a transfer pending I-20 and they're currently outside the US. And the question is about whether we'll be able to maintain their record if they're not entering the US this fall. So with that, I would say if you don't have intention of coming to the US this fall as a transfer student, we won't be able to activate your F1 record for the fall because we can only do that if you arrive to the US and have reported to your arrival. If you are going to be arriving in the spring term or later, I would say to report that change of your plans to us from the email that Nadia had referenced. And once we get that report from you, we will need to work with SCVP to update your record. We will try to maintain your current CVIS ID, but SCVP, it does have discretion to approve that request. But we will work with them to try to maintain your record. If for any reason they do not approve a request to maintain the record, you will get a new CVIS ID, which would mean a new CVIS fee payment, and your time towards off-campus work authorization would restart. But we are continuing to work with SCVP, so do report that change to us. So you will need to update your record if you're not arriving, and then we'll let you know, if we need any other information from you.
Thanks, Claire. So I will take the next 3 questions. A question was asking how many days of the I-20 start date do I need to arrive in the US? So with the current academic year, which is a very different schedule than what we used to have, for students who are coming for fall term, which is starting September 8th, you have up to 30 days to arrive if you plan to use the term to count as part of the CPT. However, if you are unable to arrive or change plans, please make sure that you're updated with ISSO, as Nadia mentioned earlier, to let us know when you plan to arrive so your I-20 is updated. For Fall B students, then the arrival date is October 26th or up to 15 days from that. So make sure your I-20 is updated for that as well, for the travel. So the next question is about stipend. And if you're a student that is in the ABD, which is a PhD student with only dissertation, again, stipend is okay for you to receive. Whether you would like to come and do your research while in the US, in New York, or stay home, that's up to you. You can do either way. Also, if you want to travel to the US, your I-20 is valid. You are enrolled as a full-time student, then you may travel anytime. So if you do decide that you want to come sometime in December, that's also okay for students who are doing ABD status. There's a question for a new student about enrolling in hybrid course and in-person course. Again, for a new student, you must enroll in at least one minimum in-person course, which is hybrid setup. Each department has different setups, so you will need to communicate with your department in terms of how the courses are laid out if you do plan to come to the US. If you plan to come to the US, even though some of the courses in your department is offered online as well, you will not be able to just do online courses. So new student must enroll in at least one hybrid course if you plan to come to the US. If you plan to stay home, online courses will be totally fine. Okay, so let's see. Pass on to Nadia.
Okay, so the next question I will answer sounds like it's from a new student. When can we expect to receive I-20s with dates updated for spring 2021? Great question. We started the process of updating I-20s for students who already received them to spring 2021. Our processing time right now is about 2 weeks. So we hope to get you your electronic I-20 by email sometime soon. If it's been close to 2 weeks, then you should be getting your electronic I-20 by email shortly. As you can imagine, we received many requests, so we're working through them as quickly as we can. The next question I think we addressed, but again, it was a question from a new student about enrolling in online courses. And if you're a new initial student, you do need to take at least one hybrid course. You cannot be online only. The next question is again about the updated electronic I-20s that we're issuing for new students. I recently received an electronic I-20 from Columbia. Can I use it to apply for my visa? Since earlier Columbia had stated that a physical I-20 is needed. Great point. Yes, earlier we were pretty adamant on sending physical I-20s with an ink signature, even though the government had permitted electronic I-20 issuance earlier this summer. Now when we're amending I-20s, we are sending them electronically, and we've received great feedback from students that says their amended electronic I-20 was not a problem. It was received well by the consulate, and they are able to use it to enter the United States. What I do recommend is that the first I-20 you receive, which has an ink signature on it, carry that with you, as well as the amended electronic I-20 printed out, of course. When you have the two together, I think it helps alleviate some of the concerns about whether or not the document is original or valid. So when you have at least one that's signed in ink and then the other one is amended and electronic and printed out, it hasn't been an issue for our students. So you should be able to use it at the consulate.
Okay, I will, there's a question about filing for tax. So many of you may be TAing this semester or last semester, and the concern about filing for tax now that you're away. That will be a question that we actually do not know right now. Because the pandemic, many things are in an emergency situation in terms of Social Security office, and also how that's going to be applying to I-9 processing and filing for tax next year. So once we have more information about tax filing for next year, we will update our website. And again, if you follow our social media, we will post that as well so that you can get more detailed information about how to file for tax for next year. That's a question we all would need to know. Another question is related to CPT. What if new students arrive in spring term when they will be eligible for CPT? If you are in a program that your internship is elective, not required, then you must complete 2 full-time enrollment. So one good thing about this coming year is that summer is a academic term, summer 21. So if you are going to come spring term, spring 21 full-time 12 credits or 1 RU, summer 12 credits, then you become eligible for CPT in the following fall. Okay.
All right. Another question we've received, is there a time limit for staying in the US after a visa has expired? And is there a time period when you have to renew your visa? So the visa stamp in your passport is an entry document, which means that it needs to be valid when you're entering the US with your I-20 or your DS-2019, so you can gain your student status upon arrival. Once you're inside the US, the length of your stay is determined by the length of your I-20 or DS-2019, you know, that you're maintaining status and continuing to enroll in classes, or maybe after your program, if you participate in work authorization. Those things are what determines your length of stay. So you can stay in the US with an expired visa in your passport, as long as you're maintaining your status and you have your valid I-20 or DS-2019. So there is no limit as far as if your visa is expired a year or more ago, but you're in a, you know, you're continuing in your 4-year program and you have your I-20 and you're studying, you can stay in the US for the whole length of your study. And there is no, you know, length of time where you would have to renew it. But if you did depart the US with an expired visa, to come back, you do need a new valid one. And the visa is something you can only obtain at the US consulate outside the US. All right, and now I will skip down to, we do have questions, and we get a lot of these about quarantine period in the US. And with that, there are, you know, so many competing regulations between state guidance, Colombia's policies, you know, you're coming in from an international flight. So we would recommend to look at Colombia's website for the COVID-19. It does have resources for what you can expect to, you know, to undergo once you arrive on campus. Their policies for, you know, returning to campus and going into dorm buildings. And then also state guidelines right now say that international travelers should quarantine, but Colombia does have policies set in place now for quarantining before you arrive back to campus. So I'd say the best resource is starting out at Columbia's website for more information on that. And then we do have a question here about, is there a latest date that we need to inform the ISSO regarding our arrival plans for fall? So this would be for the newly admitted students. And we don't have a specific deadline, as we know that everyone is still making decisions. You know, with consulates reopening, you might have a chance to get here in the coming weeks. So we will continue to follow up with students throughout the fall to confirm their arrival plans. So if you haven't made your plans just yet and you need, you know, at least a few more weeks to decide what you're doing, that's okay. You don't have to report right now, and we'll continue to send you emails, you know, so that we can confirm your plans.
Thank you. So I will answer a question about visas. What happens in case my visa is denied? Does Columbia help us in some sort? So that's a good question. On our website, on the applying for a visa page, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll have a section where you can report a visa delay or denial. A visa delay is if your visa is being checked for additional processing, if you're subject to administrative processing, and a visa denial is if you were outright denied the visa for some reason. Please do report those incidences to us because we do track them. But we've been informed by the US Department of State, US embassies, that we really can't, as an institution, influence your visa application. If your visa is denied, we definitely want to know. We can give you tips on how to go back and reapply and what documents to take the second time around. But directly, we won't be able to influence or reach out to the consulate to have them change their mind, for example. So you will need to reapply if that happens to you. I will say it's rare, so don't worry too much about it, but if it does happen, let us know. And the next question is about someone who is planning to defer to spring 2021 and will need a new I-20 from us. The question is, does that mean I'll also have to apply for a new DS-160 and any other visa prerequisites? So if you've already completed the DS-160, I know the DS-160 asks for intended arrival dates and program duration, and that will change if now you're deferring to a later semester. But to my knowledge, when you've completed a DS-160 in a particular country, it's going to remain valid for a year in that country. So you can still use that DS-160 and that visa fee that you've paid, and that should remain valid, and then you can schedule a visa appointment later on with that DS-160 application number. But please check this with your local consulate or embassy, reach out to them and let them know that you've already completed a DS-160 and paid the visa fee, and they'll let you know the next steps. But it is normal for information on the DS-160 to perhaps change based on time passing. So that's normal, and the DS-160 should remain valid in that same country. And the next question again about visa appointments. Someone received an I-20 for fall, but is now going to arrive to the US in the spring. So what should this person do regarding their visa appointment? If you have a visa appointment that is upcoming, it's scheduled already, we recommend that you wait for your updated I-20 and then either reschedule your visa appointment or reach out to the embassy to see if they can still honor your appointment. A rule that you should remember is that you can apply for your visa up to 120 days before your I-20 start date. Now, local embassies and consulates in India have actually been giving different guidance based on their preference. They're saying that you can schedule your visa appointment only 3 weeks before your I-20 start date. What they're trying to do, I think, is resolve the backlog, and they're trying to process in priority the students who have an urgent start date. So if you receive your amended I-20 with a spring start date, it's our recommendation to defer your visa appointment until later this fall, keeping in mind the 120 days, but also as a courtesy to students who are trying to arrive for fall semester, those appointments will be expedited, and those students do need to get here. So I hope that helps answer your questions about visa appointments. Thanks.
Okay, great. So there's a question about internship and what's mandatory internship. So if you are thinking about doing summer internship, the internship either are electives or mandatory. So unfortunately, your department will not be able to make a mandatory internship for one student or a few students. It has to be part of the curriculum that is pre-prescribed curriculum. So at Columbia, there's only a few programs that are requiring internships, and most of the programs are elective. So that's something that you can check with your department, check with your program. Unfortunately, it's not something that schools can change that process this year to accommodate international students. So be sure to check in with your academic department. So right now, I think we will take one last question. Claire will answer that, I think.
Yes, so we did receive quite a few questions about students who have applied to defer to the spring semester, and will they need to present new bank documents for the updated I-20. So as long as you've reported your change of arrival plans to our office, so that's the email we sent out, and you would log into Compass to report those changes, and you've received your I-20 for fall already, we will update your I-20 for spring, but will not require any additional documents since you had just applied recently for the fall I-20. But just as Nadia said, as a reminder, you know, if you had told your department that your plans have changed, but you've not yet submitted that report to us in Compass, we will not be processing any I-20 requests for you right now. So make sure you log in, submit the request, and you'll see you're not required to submit any updated documents for the spring amended I-20.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Claire. Right now we have come to the end of our session. I would like to say thank you to our panelists for participating, answering questions. Those are great questions. If you have additional questions, please contact us. For new students, there is a new Intel email address you may contact, or any of our advisors. For continued student, please contact the ISSO address. I would like now to turn to NCAT for a few comments before we end.
Thank you, Samantha. So it was a great session, and I hope most of the students got their questions answered. Feel free to reach out to ISSO. I definitely recommend to all of you, because I have personally benefited from all the help that I've got from them so far as well, being a continuing student. And also, if you have any queries, I've shared the ISAC details on the chat box. Reach out to us for any questions you have before you start your Columbia journey. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you all for taking part in our webinar. The webinar will be posted to our website shortly after the session ends. If you have any additional questions we're unable to answer right now, please feel free to contact us. With that, we thank you, and we will now complete the session.